I say we're destined to grow. We're destined to change, and we embrace that right now in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, you may be seated. Looks like we do have nursery or childcare downstairs if you want to go check in there. Sorry, my voice is a little manly tonight. I've been doing a lot of talking, and then I have a little bit of a crud. All right, you can turn your Bibles if you have them with you to Proverbs chapter 4. I'm going to read some scriptures regarding wisdom. Now, remember what we talked about. Our past is our past, right? It was what it was. Our present is now what it is. Well, how did it get to be what it is? Because of what it was. You can't pretend that this is something so different than your past information. Your past information is actually what got you here. And now the only thing we can do is look back to the past and change how we view it, embrace it, settle it, grieve it, bring it to a close, but you still haven't changed the past. It stays the way that it is, right? So now we're in the now, and our view of the past then becomes changed because we're actually looking toward the future to bring something brand new. And in order to have something brand new, we have to have wisdom. And remember, wisdom is past, present, know the future. It's seeing things panoramically. So wisdom actually in Proverbs is referred to as a woman. So Jesus created the earth, and it talks about that. And then it says wisdom was standing right there, right? And so this is what it says in verse 6. Do not turn away from her, that's wisdom, and she will guard and protect you. Love her, and she'll watch over you. The beginning of wisdom is get skillful and godly wisdom. It's preeminent. So the beginning part of it is to make it a priority to actually get it, right? And with all you're acquiring, get understanding. Actively seek spiritual discernment, mature comprehension, logical interpretation. We're on a path like, I'm going to seek this. We're going to get this. Prize wisdom and exalt her, and she will exalt you. She'll honor you if you embrace her. She will place on your head a garland of grace. She'll present you with a crown of beauty and glory. Whew. And it goes on in other sections and talks about her. Also talks about her crying in the streets. And she says, I am wisdom. I'm here. And then usually we're like, huh? I just wish I had some wisdom. And she's like, over here. I am here. And we just like went right over our head. Because you have to, it just let us know. You have to instinctively, like, really make up your mind. I am seeking her. I will find. Right? Otherwise, it'll be like, oh, it'll come along. You know, God will grace me with some wisdom. If you ain't looking for it, you ain't going to find it. It can be right in front of your face, but you won't see it. You have to be intense about wisdom. You have to be intent of it, you know, like this is what I'm after. One of the things that we covered in the weeks past, for those of you who are new here tonight, is we talked about the five senses and how our five senses record, either loudly or smoothly or calmly, depending on the situation and anything that's happened, especially under the age of 13, when we're in the age of directives. The age of directives is when you're told what to do and you do it because you were told to do it. You really don't care about the rest. It's just mom said to, so I did, you know, kind of thing. And so when we're in that age group and we get wounded, and it keeps us from being able to have a self-perception, things like that. If we recorded those wounds loudly, then when we recall them loudly. You don't record something really loudly without bringing it to closure. And then, you know, you're 30 years old and you're like, I think I'm going to remember that right now. If it hasn't been brought to closure, if it was recorded loud, you will remember it loud. I've had it myself, having gone through incest and molestation and things like that. And I didn't know it was happening to me when I had it, but like familiar smells. The smell of an old farmhouse or, you know, chicken cooking on a stove or whatever can be a trigger to people because, you know, whatever was happening at the time you were recording through your five senses. How many of you know when you go to grandma's house, it smells like grandma's house? We don't know why, but each grandma is a little different. But it smells like grandma's house because you've logged in like that's what grandma's house is like, right? Well, what if a molestation happened at grandma's house? Then that smell is going to be a trigger for you, okay? Part of wisdom is being able to stretch back and look at what happened, see how it got you to the now, and know that you're safe to go to the future. But when we record something that was loud and we don't have a good perspective on it, we also aren't sure what's real. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. There's something about really knowing, this is what happened to me and this was the realness of it. Because sometimes we'll remember back and we're like, I don't know why this bothers me so much, but it just bothers me. And someone else looking in would go, are you kidding me? I would lose my mind if that happened to me. But we'll feel like, I don't know why it bothers me. Or there'll be things that happen that don't bother you at all, or it'll seem like things are suppressed or whatever. Someone looking in is like, why aren't you crying about this? Why aren't you upset? What's going on? Because we've lost the realness factor to be able to tap in and say, here's what's real. This is what's real is I'm hurting in this area. This scared me. Whatever it is, and you have to be able to call a spade a spade. So I have my snake up here because we talked about this before. The bite has to match the wound. Remember how I talked about that? So sometimes we'll record certain things really loud that might have been our perception, and the bite doesn't match the wound. For instance, when people are in denial and they'll say, it really wasn't that big a deal. No, your leg just got sawed off, but it was kind of like, it's not that big a deal. What we're really saying is we're downplaying it to say really that was a bug bite compared to a Jurassic Park. The T-Rex bite is a T-Rex bite. You're going to know you got bit. So if you record something loud, the brain keeps searching for, does the bite match the wound? Am I overdoing it? Am I underdoing it? It's not sure after a while what's real. And what's interesting, somebody asked a question before class, and I said, I'll go ahead and deal with that. And that is panic disorder is an interpretation from past traumas that will then say, if something's happening to the now, I have to interpret what's happening right now according to how I've recorded before. And it'll do it ahead of time even. You'll start getting anxious, and you're like, I don't even know. Nothing's going on. I don't know why, but your body's responding and everything's responding. But it's responding to something you recorded loudly before, and it trained the body to record it loud. So if you come down off of that, like panic attack, all of a sudden when you're in the panic attack, how many of you know it is so stinking real? You're like, this is the end of my life. I can't even breathe. My chest is tight. I need to go to the hospital. Maybe I'm having a heart attack, right? But then when you come down off of it, you're like, okay, so I hope nobody noticed that I just had a major panic attack because I'm fine right now. It's just a creepy feeling. So then your brain says, so which one's real? Which one's real? And that's important that we know, okay, well, what was going on? Did the bite match a wound? Can you find the wound? Are you thinking Jurassic Park when the reality of it is a ladybug bit you? But if it's been recorded that way, our brain can actually convince us that, we're being chased by a T-Rex. And then if your cognitive knows it's a ladybug, but you feel like it's a T-Rex, it makes you feel crazy. Because the bite doesn't match the wound. And you're like, I don't know why I'm losing it. It doesn't seem like it matches, right? So part of wisdom is giving a good analysis of our past and bringing it into the present and being able to call a spade a spade. Now, some of the things that I went through really bothered me to begin with before I had closure on them. In fact, if someone would just look at me and just ask the question, what happened to you? It'd be like my stomach would come up into my throat and I couldn't breathe and I'd be like, frozen. Me not having something to say, that's pretty major, right? She actually didn't talk. We need to take her to the hospital now. It's like, because me, I'm very expressive. But at the same time, I could not process to get it out. So sometimes the wound will be recorded so loud it inhibits our ability to express, or we didn't get to express, and we carry the feeling of that past wound like it's in the present. Right? And we will avoid that thought pattern because we know if we trigger that thought pattern, then what's going to happen? We don't know what's going to happen. That's what makes us panic. We don't know if we're going to totally lose it, if we're going to walk bravely, if all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, we start crying and can't stop, we can't breathe. Then we fear the panic attack more than we feared the thing that caused the panic attack. After a while, we're afraid of ourselves. I can't go to the store. I can't do this. I can't do that. Because I never know when a panic attack is going to happen. A lot of you are nodding your heads because you know exactly what I'm talking about. So we have to figure out what's the size of the wound? What's reality about that wound? Because if I recorded something when I was 5, like somebody comes around the corner and scares me now, I'm like, just do that number, whatever. I might go, oh. But right away, this is my reaction, right? You get the same thing. See, we're so much alike every time. I don't know what the deal is. And so anyways, it'll be like that. But when you're a kid, you literally, and little kids actually can end up on the floor. If somebody scares them in the right manner, they can just end up fetal position, and then they're mad and sad and everything all at the same time. Well, if I got scared when I was little, and now my interpretation of every time I get scared is that interpretation, and I can't bring it over into an adult interpretation, then the bite doesn't match the wound. Or the wound doesn't match the bite. Does that make sense? See, there's something about stopping and giving yourself a reality check. Anybody here ever, feel like you were drowning or someone pushed you under the water and now you're not really thrilled about swimming? Anybody have that? Okay. That's an example of something that can happen that in the now, if you're standing in a swimming pool in the 4-foot area, you're standing there. If you fall over, you can still get up. It's amazing, right? But when you're only this little and somebody pushes you under, the reality is you do not have the control to stand back up. And it gets really scared. And so you get very frustrated and scared and terrified when the water comes because it says to you a life command, and that life command says, I have no control. If you carry that into the now and you're standing in 4 foot of water, do you have control? You absolutely have control. But the emotional state says, I don't. Anything could happen to me at any time. I don't have control right now. So you literally have to retrain the brain to show how much control you have. So I've shared this story before. Some of you have heard it where, years ago when we didn't know stuff, we know some things now. And so that's what I'm teaching out of, but we didn't know a whole lot of stuff back in the day. And my husband and I went up a big hill. It wasn't a mountain. In North Dakota, they feel like it's a mountain, but we've been on mountains. It's not a mountain, but it's a really big hill. I mean, you could really hurt yourself coming down it or whatever. And he wanted to go up with the snowmobiles and then just come down. And I got to the top of the hill, and I was like, oh, snap, I ain't going down that. Because there's barbed wire fence. You got to stop yourself before. I'm not really sure about the machine. I had all this going through my head, right? And then do I want to practice this? I don't know. And we're standing there, and I'm like, no, I'm going to. He said, no, you can do it. No. So he's sensing that there's fear or apprehension. And so to get me over that, he just pushes the snowmobile over. You're on the edge, and it's like, adios, baby. And so I'm like, whoa, and I'm trying to control the machine because when you're going down some of these, like, have ravines, and it's whooping you up and different things like that. And then as I got to the bottom, he rides down with a big smile on his face. Not like he was playing a joke on me. He honestly felt like he healed me. And I came up, my head was down, and when I came up, he knew I was not healed. Someone was going to die today, and it wasn't going to be me, And he's like, no, what's wrong? I mean, see, it was fun. And I'm like, that was not fun. Why wasn't it fun? It's because he took my control away. I could have made it fun when I was ready to. But he took the control away, and then it wasn't fun. Which goes back to what happened to me when I was a kid. I needed to have that control because I didn't have the control when I was young. Stuff would just happen to me. And, even if the question was posed, do you want to do it? No, I guess we're doing it, It's like, you didn't get a chance to choose. So I really like the chance to choose on certain things, right? But I also have grown to the point that it's like I could go through that same situation now and it wouldn't bother me at all. But it bothered me then. But when I was going down the hill, really, was it Jurassic Park? No, but it felt like it. It wasn't a ladybug bite, but it wasn't Jurassic Park. But my body interpreted it. The memories in my body interpreted it. It's like I have no control. And you could see the barbed wire fence coming. It was a long ravine, but you're going really fast when you come off something that big, you know? And then the brakes weren't all that loving. And if you're going fast on a snowmobile, which I do like to do in open field or whatever, that I've driven around and I know the terrain first. You know, go just open it up and there's a big rock and suddenly you hit it and something went wrong. No, I want to know what the terrain is and then I'll open it up or whatever. But there's something about coming down that hill that also felt like no control because the path was a new path. No one had gone down and you can actually whip and flip and your brain's interpreting all of that at the same time. And he's interpreting how much fun I'm having. We do this with kids. I've seen people do this with the water's cold at the beach, right? But they want their little one to go into the water. Oh, come on. And they'll just take them and pop them in there. So then it's kind of like, let me do that to you. Let's do that to you. Sometimes, you know, if a child's watching TV and they got the remote, I'll see parents walk in and just take the remote and walk off. Well, let me do that to you. There's no communication. There's no preparedness. There's no like, hey, honey, I'm going to use that now, okay? We're going to be done with this show. Nothing. Just take the remote and walk off. Yeah. See, anytime you're taking any form of control away from a person where they have a wound, you are now triggering that area that might feel like Jurassic Park when really it maybe just, you know, was a squirrel bite. We don't know. Squirrel bites hurt. I've been bit. They're trying to laugh at me over here. I want to preach to this side here. No. No, they do. I've been bit by a squirrel. You haven't been bit by a squirrel? It's a new experience. You selling birds, and I'd sit and talk to the birds, and all of a sudden, right in the face, and you're pulling them off. It hurts. But it's not the same, I would guess, as a T-Rex, right? When the body interprets the T-Rex, it's preparing for the T-Rex. Now, you see that other person as dangerous as a T-Rex. You hear them, right, as loud as a T-Rex. All those ports start to record it like, this is really happening. And anyone else looking in is like, that ain't no T-Rex. He didn't even mean anything by that. I mean, you're okay. But that's not what it felt like to you, right? And then there's a part of it where we have lack of wisdom, we will measure against the worst of what we've been through. Have you ever done this? Somebody's crying because they stubbed their toe, and you're like, are you serious? I was beat on the streets of Chicago, and you stubbed your toe, and now you're acting like Jurassic Park, right? Okay, but if they've never experienced the streets of Chicago, it actually might feel like Jurassic Park to them. So you have to reinterpret. You have to be like, now I see it through my eyes, but now I got to come over and see it through their eyes. I'm looking out and I'm like, oh, well, maybe that does look different to them. See? So, but that's where the terms build a bridge and get over it comes out, because that's that thing. Like my interpretation, what I've been through, all the rejection and everything why are you crying? Build a bridge and get over it. Well, because it might interpret to them as Jurassic Park. Whether you think it's a ladybug bite and she feels like it's a T-Rex, that is her feelings, her interpretation, what she's going through. And one of the things, I like what Dr. Phil says when he says, to tell somebody you shouldn't feel this way is called emotional rape. It's violating to that person. Because here's why. Because you already do feel that way. So then the brain goes, I'm not even supposed to be feeling what I'm feeling. On top of the fact that I felt it, now I'm a loser altogether. and you're trying to rein it back in and readjust your everything. And the thing is, you do feel that way. It was scary to you. It was hurtful to you. It was whatever. And so the better thing to do if a child's afraid or your loved one's afraid is to be able to say, so where are you coming from? How do you see this? What are you hearing right now? Is that what you heard me say? What did you hear me say? See, now I'm going into the ports and saying, I'd like to know what you see it from your side. I want to hear how you hear it from your side. But then if I'm all about me, then I'll just go, that's not the way I heard it. You need to get over it. That's kind of cruel. Because now rape is actually, if you look up the word rape, it means unwanted touch. But rape emotionally is that feeling of just like someone took control. Walked right over the boundaries, and now they have control, and they're telling me I shouldn't feel. But it's too late, I actually do feel. Now what am I supposed to do? So you have the command of get over it so you can please the person, but how do you just pull it together to please the person? And that is a fight waiting to just go through the roof, isn't it? Because we all want to be acknowledged and we want to be heard. And I like reality checks. I have learned to say, I'm not sure I'm interpreting what just happened here right, because I have way too much emotion about it. When I'm at my best, that's how I talk with my husband. And he'll say, okay, what did you hear me say? What I heard you say was, and it made me feel like, okay, back it up. That is not what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. Right? And so we do that. It takes longer for a conversation sometimes. But if it's a wounded area, we cannot move on until I have the correct interpretation of what happened in the moment. PTSD needs an interpretation. And really, when you have somebody come alongside of you, you're looking for an interpreter. Because PTSD is the loudness of how everything was recorded. It's anticipating something's happening again that might not have, or hasn't, or won't. So you need someone else to give you a reality check. But it's how a person gives you a reality check, whether or not you'll receive it. Let me give you a reality check, okay? I've seen you do this before. It's driving me nuts. When you do this, that's not a reality check. What do you see as real? How did you hear? What does your hearing say is real? Because this is what I'm seeing. Now, I'm not you, so I don't feel what you're feeling, but I'm really trying to wrap my head around where you're at right now. See how the conversation sounds different? Right? Sometimes we treat our children like as if they can't feel. Grab them by the arm, or dragging them, or do different things, because they don't have feelings, they're kids. Now, you don't want to follow all of their feelings, but we need to make them safe enough so they're willing to follow where you're going, because you are the leader. And we need to give them options at times so they can make some choices, so they can feel like, hey, I actually have some power in this world too. I chose the blue one. Mom wanted the red, and she let me do it, right? So there's just something about learning that it's okay for you to make choices, and that not everyone controls your every move, but there is authority that we need to be under. And if those things are really messed up, that's going to cause some PTSD interactions, that we're going to have high highs and low lows regarding things that we see as real that might not be reality. Have you ever seen the old show, Jerry Springer? No one here would ever watch that, right? If I can stomach 2 minutes of it. You're going through and you're like, oh, there's that show. It's just strife all the way across the board. And there's something about that draws people in, because wherever we have unresolved strife, we want something out there to equal what we're feeling. So we'll get on there, is that the baby daddy or not, right? And then somebody always gets up, oh boy, and they're in someone else's face, and there's this whole drama and strife filled, where the Bible says, where there's strife, there dwelleth every evil and wicked thing. So I don't appreciate the show, just so you know. I don't, because it helps to train and breed strife. But if we feel strifeful inside, we'll be looking for something that we can choose a side on and be in somebody's fight. Sometimes we'll do that without watching TV. We'll do that with friends. It's like, oh, are you mad? Okay, I'm going to choose one of you two, and then I'll just get on a side because I'm angry inside. And then we can cause some drama, we can do some stuff, but I'll get this out of me when really all we're doing is adding to it. And part of that comes from not being able to self-evaluate again, to really cry as hard as you're going to cry, feel the fear that you felt, fear the anger that you felt, and when you come down off of that, be able to go, okay, so I got to give myself a reality check. I probably felt way too strong about that. You know? Some little thing can go so strong. We've had people leave the church because my husband didn't shake their hand when they came through the door. That's like Jurassic Park. That's not even a ladybug. It's going to give you a reality check. It's like if your feelings are hung that far on your sleeve, it wasn't his fault that that's there. Right, that's right. When you got your feelings hanging out like that, you're going to bump up against something that you can blame. But he didn't shake your hand? Well, he was shaking someone else's. Oh, no. I wouldn't even stay married. If I find this is happening all the time, I'll probably have to leave him. That's a Jurassic Park comment. That's a way out there. Like, okay, this is a smaller thing that we're doing. But then what's wild is sometimes people can tell me stories where you're sitting there, and I don't shock and awe real easy, right? They'll tell me something, and I'm looking at them, and I'm thinking, like, why are you so calmly saying this? It's like saying, yeah, I got hit by a bus, but anyway, I made it to class in time. Okay, I'll have a seat. I mean, it's like, blood's dripping down there. What? So there's extremes of not being able to interpret either side, and the power is in the interpretation. PTSD is post-traumatic. It's way before, and it's usually based on something that scared you. Like there was a person who ended up in a car accident. Well, after that, every bump in the road, panic attacks. So she had to stay out of the car. And then all of a sudden, panic attacks. If she came up and there was like a pothole and it just went boom, boom, she was like, oh, then she'd have to get out and look under the car to see if someone was under there dead. That's what it started. The brain started to interpret, it's happening again. It's happening again. Well, we all know, but that's not true, right? We'll be like, that's not true. But yet, the brain will say, yes, it is. I felt the sensation. It felt just like before I hit that truck. I remember the boom, boom, I remember the sounds and how I hit the brakes and the jolt of adrenaline that went through me. This is real right now. And yet it's not real right now. So reality checks are everything. Now, we also talked about the three parts of us in how the brain functions is you have your I part, which is where you make your I statements. And your I statements are usually exacto knife, I call them statements. There's not a variance. It's very exact, like, I'm going to school tomorrow. Okay. We don't say, the Lord willing, I'll be at school tomorrow. It's exacto knife. Like you cut it and now there's no other variation. And when we do that and we make big statements and then they don't end up coming to pass, we've compromised our I statements. Right? I'm quitting smoking. That's what I'm doing. That's it. I feel this way and I'm going to quit smoking. Okay, but then when that gets compromised and you go to make another I statement, already your brain and your heart will say, what? Aren't you the same person that said, like 2 days ago you said, and it'll remind you. Your subconscious will bring that file up and go, hey, what you doing? You can't make that big statement because you broke your promise already, so you compromised the promise. Then it's when we distance ourselves, we talked a little bit about that, where you back away and you start referring to yourself almost like in the third person. A lot of people do that with their kids. Well, someone, broke a vase the other day. Just saying, and the kid's like, you're actually talking to him like he's not there, but you're in the third person. Ever have that happen to you? And you're like, you are talking about me, but I didn't say that. So it's a way of distancing. It's the statement has been so compromised that now the third part of us will talk about the third, in the third person. I distance myself from that. And we'll refer to it like that. When really it's that second part, right down the middle of the brain where our cingulate is, where we gear shift and we make choices. That's the part where we take our most mature self and talk to the compromised statements. And in those compromised statements, almost always is where we're immature. Right? We talk smack when we're in that section. When we're making our I statement, And little kids, they have such faith. They'll be like, I'm going to be a trucker when I get older, and I'm going to be a doctor. And so you're going to be all those things? Yep. They don't have the reality to build around the fact that it's going to be more difficult to be 3 things or 4 things or whatever. Maybe over your lifetime you could do it. But she even tried to explain that to a 4 or 5-year-old. You're like, no. It's like, well, that's cool, buddy. Right? So, but we should grow out of the grandiose statements that we use with our I statements. But I'll tell you this, when it comes to addiction, the day you stop growing emotionally. So here's the hard part about wisdom. You've got the past, the present, and where we want to go in the future. If you started using when you were 14 years old and now you're 35 and you're like rocking sobriety and you are, coming up on your first year, woo, and the body believes it now. They're like, all your organs are like, thank God, finally, I can actually do this thing, right? What will happen is the brain will go, okay, that movie that we were in till we were 14, it's been on pause this whole time. And you'll think, I'm in the now only, so I'm going to move ahead, when actually the brain goes, actually, we have to finish watching that movie. Yeah, but that's when I was 14. Yeah, but you can't leave that 14-year-old part behind you. You're going to have to take it off pause. And then as soon as we take it off pause and start addressing where we came from and what our story is and all, there's this uncomfortable 14-year-old person in this older person's body that you don't want to let anybody know is only 14, right? So we do all the postures of an adult. I don't know if that was an adult posture, but I just did it. So I don't know how do you look like when you're an adult? I know. So maybe this is it. I don't know. Maybe it's questionable. But so if it's that, and all of a sudden you can feel that 14-year-old creeping up on the inside of you, you're like, oh, shoot, that movie is still playing. Oh, that never brought to closure. I don't know how it ended. I'm not sure. It's a part of me. And we don't like that. So we keep trying to put it on pause. So we'll go for a while without using or doing something to detour from it. And then we'll pause it again. We're like, whew, that almost caught up with me. Then we'll drink and we'll do whatever. And we're on pause again. And then later, we're like, no, I'm not going to do that. I have to go deal with my 16-year-old self now or whatever. And we're pulling that person forward. Wisdom wants that person to come forward. Wisdom is crying in the streets, hello, I'm over here, right? I want to show you panoramically how these things go. And so we're in that spot, then we have to have a reality check. And so even the person in the middle, that this decision maker, right? In the middle, that part of us, that is that soul part that says, yeah, we better choose life that we might live. So I better talk to the younger part of me and get it up to speed. And then I got to look to the future because I can't be not looking this way and always looking that way. Right? No soldier left behind, though. Right? No soldier left behind. That's the way you got to look at it. Like we are full battle rattle. And if I got to go back and get my battle buddy, that's 12, then I'm going to pull my battle buddy forward. Make sense? Right? And you wouldn't leave your kid on the other side of the mountain while you're just having a blast over there, right? You're going to have to go get that younger part of you. And that's the part about sobriety, or that's the part about healing from trauma that nobody likes, because it takes up time, space, and energy in your brain. You want to go to the beach? Well, who's coming with you? little Jimmy. Jimmy coming with? I don't want you to because you're like 5. And I'm trying to have a 35-year-old date today. Okay, Jim? We're getting a sitter for you. Nah, he's going to be there. He's going to be there, and he might just play quietly in the flutter area of your brain. Just sit back in there and flutter. Or somebody could say something or look at you a certain way, and all of a sudden you're 5 years old. I'm 5 years old. I run fast. So, but when you do that in a 5-year-old's body, right? 5-year-olds, especially when you're at an event, they're starting the look at me stage. You know, by the time they're 7, they're really wanting you to look at them. You get a new pair of tennis shoes. Look at me. You know, they can run so fast. Okay, you got to watch them. It's so cool. And so that's that part that would make you spend all your money on some big truck that's just pouring, sucking gas and not making sense. Your people can't even get into it. So high off the ground, and you're revving it and getting tickets for loud noises. Right? So here's the thing, though. What age group does that? 5 years old to 7. My truck. Okay, so my dad's bigger than your dad is in that age, right? That's the age group it is. Right. And who has what toy, or, you know, who has the prettiest dress? Shoot, we used to throw down when we were, and I know I don't wear dresses and stuff, but, you know, they'd make the big frilly dresses back in Nam, you know, so, and so the thing is, when you were at church or something, it was like, whoosh, and you'd go around and your dress would swirl. That was like a fashion statement and a control statement. Mine was the better swirl, right? So those are all like, look at me. And it's acceptable when you're 5, 6, 7 years old. In fact, it's kind of funny, but you do want them to grow out of it. But it's funny. That's when you're trying to parent them and you have to turn away because you're laughing so hard. You're like, they just, okay, anyways, you know, and you come back at it because it makes so much sense to them, but you as an adult know that doesn't make sense. In the big world, not going to happen, right? So if you're taking your younger self everywhere, and they're pretty young and they want to be seen all the time, that's going to cause the sensations that say, I want to be bigger than life. I want to be the best. I want to be the prettiest. I want to be the strongest. And it's like, calm down, soldier, and just be you. Just hang out, chill. But that's not the feeling. Now, if you drug that little kid, right? Your most mature self is not the one who's like, we're doing heroin tonight. I've scheduled it after we eat steak, and I do the dishes, right? I expect all these rooms clean, right? That's your adult self talking. I have to work in the morning, and then we'll go ahead and use heroin. Your adult self doesn't talk like that. But your kid self is like, yeah, well, mom ain't looking. When the older me doesn't know, I'm going to sneak around. And there's this sensation that comes up of almost like a rebellion. And, you know, the word rebellion, I like taking apart words. If you look at the word rebellion, it means rebel lion. Jesus is the lion of the tribe of Judah, right? We're bold as lions when we're righteous, the Bible says. But you got the one who goes around like a lion, seeking whom he may devour. That's Scar, right? Have you seen The Lion King? All right, that's Scar. Just saying. I watch cartoons. Okay, maybe that's my younger self. No, I have grandkids and I have them memorized. Lord help me. But in that big picture of things, if you're taking the younger you places and now you're not sure how to parent the younger you, and that part of you throws a fit or gives a sensation that seems more real than your adult self, it'll feel like there's 10 little kids and one little adult here. And all of a sudden you're overpowered by that. Many times that's when we get up and leave. I got to disengage. I got to get out of here, whatever. These kids are nuts inside of me. I mean, and we just got to go home. and wrangle. The other part is your most adult self has a hard time wrangling the younger part of you when you're lacking sleep. Did you know that? The brain will operate in such a way where it's almost like, yeah, don't do that. Okay, that's not right. Okay, so whatever you want to do. I mean, it'll just go into that because it doesn't have a clearness. It's not firing right, and it's not being fed right either when you're tired. The more tired you are, the less oxygen you carry. The less messages to the brain, right? So there's something about getting rest and resetting yourself and pulling your most adult self forward, knowing that we're going to have to parent that younger part of us. And I like parenting classes. I've taught parenting classes, but the best teacher is the Holy Spirit. The Spirit and the Word. If you go to those classes, you know exactly what to do with your children. Huh? So now, if there was a car accident out here and a 5-year-old saw the car accident, their interpretation, like, what happened, buddy? Big car was coming and I couldn't get out of the way, and I said, Mom, and she wasn't there. And I mean, their whole story would be, kind of like that, right? You get an 8-year-old seeing the car accident, and he's describing there was like a red car coming down, and he had to be going like 150 miles an hour. Is it real? We don't know. But that's how it felt to that person, right? Teenagers now, and if you're a teenager, don't feel insulted. This is the talk. If I say, what was your day at school like? I just want to die. Okay, that's like saying Jurassic Park, when really it wasn't at that level. Another one will say is, I'm starving. Really? Have you seen starving children? But we'll use words that are the adjectives that are over here. Adults shouldn't do that. I'm just giving you the goals that we're headed for. When we have mature areas, it's a level way of describing things. And so I always say that, if I'm talking to an adult and they're sharing their story and I know they're sharing it as their younger them, maybe it's a 13-year-old younger them, I cut their story in half, kind of like, cut the baby in half like in Scripture. Let's cut that in half, and the real reality will come forward. If only half of that is what they said, that's bad. If only half of that, is true, wow, that's really good. But I don't take the whole thing like that was an exacto. That is exactly what happened. I don't. This is why police officers, if there's a car accident, they try to find at least 5 people to interview, because everyone saw it from a distance or a different angle. And, it's one of those things. How loud did they hear it? How intense did they see it? What was their feeling? Do they presently have PTSD and they saw this happening and they thought they were going to die? And so now when they share the story, even though the accident happened way away from them, they're sharing it from the angle of like, we could have died tonight. No, they might have died tonight. I was fine. Like, see what I'm saying? And so to wrangle your story when you go to write your story, which I've asked you, to practice doing, try to put even 2 pages of your story down. Okay, so I'm starting. You get the pencil or the pen, and you're like, can't type it, because that's different. The brain uses the typing differently, especially if you're that person. Writing takes a little longer, which causes your brain to have to slow down and really think, is why that kind of thinking, that kind of writing does good, right? So you go to put that down. What's the realness of your story? It makes you have to think more. Like I think I talked about this like 3 weeks ago. And so when you go to write it, which view are you writing it from? This is why sometimes I'll ask people to share their testimony, and just be quite frank, they freak out because they're not sure which version. It's not that they're liars. It depends on how they feel about that story. If they're in a mode where they feel Jurassic Park, then they will share their testimony Jurassic Park style. And then if they're in a mode where it's, ladybug bite, they'll share it like that, even if it doesn't match. The bite doesn't match the wounds. See? It's us coming to a place where we get real. And the question tonight was about PTSD. What happens if you're at the grocery store, you had no expectation you were going to have a panic attack, and boom, it's there. How do you pull yourself out of that? Well, I like it, and I had panic disorder when I was younger. Didn't know how to handle that, so I would run with it. I'd be like, I can't breathe. I don't know what's going on. I don't know, and you'd ramp yourself way up. Well, the farther you ramp up is the farther you'll spiral down, right? Then I learned later on, get in a dark room so the lights aren't stimulating your nervous system. Breathe from where your stomach rises and falls, and just make yourself talk slowly. So this works if you're in a grocery store too. It's just people are coming in your zone. You got to find a spot near the toilet paper or something and just kind of get in there. And, and you're there and be like, I'm not going for this. I'm going to breathe my way through it. And then you give yourself a reality check. I am not dying right now. And then breathe. This is going to pass. Now, when you're at the height of a panic attack, a true panic attack, you can say those words and there is nothing in you that will believe that. Because your physical body is feeling something that's not lining up with what's presently going on. But you still call it to where you're going. It's hard to do. And so if you have a young person who's in the middle of that and they're not practiced on it or whatever, and it doesn't matter what age or whatever, then somebody has to come alongside of them and talk slower and hold them and just say, breathe. It's okay. You do completely opposite than what the panic attack says. But what will happen is people will start feeling it to come on. They start getting angry because they know where it's going to go. And there's an agitation. I need to hurt somebody or myself. I am not doing this thing. I hate this thing. Oh, and your thoughts are racing 100 miles an hour on whatever it is happened to you. And then what it'll do, it's almost like a tornado. It'll start out real small. You know how you see a cloud and it'll start gaining a tail? And ooh, that's a tornado in formation, right? What it will do is it'll gather more of the cloud. It'll gather more of the air as it's getting bigger and bigger. It's the same thing with our thoughts. It's like I have a main thought. Oop, there came the tail. And now every other thought that I don't have closure to is now in the tornado. And you'll find yourself it just feels like you're being machine gunned in your own head. All you hear is, and you're like, I don't know. We'll start saying things like that. Somebody say, are you okay? I don't know. What do you need? I don't know. Because you don't know. And so that's also something, can I help? Sometimes people will say, I don't know. Well, then your first answer should be, it's okay, I'm here for you. It's okay. Right? You stay in their zone, close enough to them, because sometimes touching is not what they want in that moment, because they don't know, right? You move in closer a little bit at a time as they're coming. The tornado will start going back up into the clouds. And then all of a sudden, if you've had a panic attack like that and someone's there, how many of you felt stupid? Because like I said, it's so real. And then it goes up and you're like, and so anyway, we going grocery shopping tomorrow or what are we doing? It's just, it's kind of a creepy feeling because it was so real. If you end up in the ER and it's so real, and then you leave and go home and you're like, what was that all about? Because the realness in your body, the adrenaline takes about an hour and a half to leave, right? You got to walk it off. So the best thing you can do is go for a walk when you're adrenalized. Takes about an hour and a half for that to come down. And then your most adult self will say, what were we doing? I never want that to happen again. Right? When you're in the tornado, though, you do not feel like your most adult self. Your most victimized self is in there swirling. That is not your most powerful you. That's your most victimized feeling of, because remember I said, if you feel like a victim, then everyone else is a bully. So whenever that starts coming down out of the clouds, it's like, I'm a victim. Everything else is a bully. Everything around you is after you. It's taking something from you. I can remember having such a bad panic attack in the grocery store. Had the cart full or whatever, and I was hoping, I'm going to make it in and out this time. It's going to be good. This was years and years ago. And all of a sudden, I got this sensation where, it's just like my adrenaline must have went off. And your brain looks around and like, for what? Nothing's going on. Because once you have a few panic attacks, your adrenaline glands will just randomly go off by themselves at the weirdest times. Nothing's going on right now, right? But they'll all of a sudden go off. So I'm in a grocery store, and then this happened a few times, and then it's like, oh snap, there's no oxygen in this place. That's how it felt. And you start looking around at people, and everyone's taking your oxygen, like they're in your space, they're brushing by you, and it's like, stop, I can't breathe. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So there's that sensation. How many of you use a weighted blanket? Yeah. How many of you know about weighted blankets? They'll sell them at Walmart and Target, and Walmart's cheaper. But anyways, put a little plug in there. So anyways, some people, they feel so comforted because the more you panic, the more an intense panic will actually make you feel like you're leaving your body. And we talked about that probably a month ago, that people who have been through extreme sexual abuse or something like that, when they go into a panic, they are leaving their body. They can feel themselves separating, and this is where cutting comes from. The sensation of cutting is like, I am leaving, this is not real anymore, I can't, and then you cut yourself and you're like, okay, I'm still here. Yeah? It releases adrenaline because of the pain, and all of a sudden now I know I'm here because I'm in pain. Okay, I'm here. Then it becomes very addicting as a way to calm down the panic attack to begin with. And it just feeds the monster, doesn't it? So there's something with that that is now culturing a non-reality too. It's just that feeling. So if we're in these panic attacks and we feel like we can't get air and all of that, you have to give yourself a reality check. And sometimes calling somebody in that moment's hard, but if you can, and just say, give me a reality check. Am I okay? You're okay, I just need you to breathe. Like the little kid in you is like, somebody tell me what to do. It's really what it's saying. I'm crying, I don't know who's safe. I'm not sure where to go. And somebody has to say, you're safe, you're okay. So that you can have it go back up. Well, the problem is, when it goes back up and you come down off of that and you're your most adult self, there's an embarrassment and some shame that is kind of like, and then you try to tell your significant other or your friends or whatever, no, I was having a panic attack. And they're like, yeah, you always do that. You're so drama. Anyone ever have that happen? Just drama. Just crying your face off. You end up in the hospital. And look at you now. You're fine. Aren't you fine? You're just fine. Which will add to it. And then you begin to fear the panic because now no one believes me. And so I can't have this happen because no one's going to believe me. Well, then we're ramping up even higher. You see that? That's why coming to something like this, I'm not giving you permission to have a panic attack, but what I am saying is it's just a neurological response that we actually can control if we know what's going on. You have to rebuild your adrenaline glands if you've done this for a long time. Add some meth, sprinkle that in your situation. A little bit of cocaine, anything through the roof. You'll be panicking about stuff. When you come down off of that, you'll be panicking about something that is not even going on. Paranoia. There's nothing even going on. And you'd be like, you just want my money. You're just taking this from me. She has my towel. My friend came over and took my towel. You're like, okay, all right, Jurassic Park, that's what that is. And then you can take it to a higher level. Like the T-Rex is dangerous, but you let loose 4 or 5 raptors. I'm just saying. They're coming from every direction. The T-Rex is chasing you know exactly where he is. The raptors are after you every which way, right? And they trap you. And they're that thought pattern that will have a lead thought, and the rest will come around you because they want to eat you, right? And we feel like a victim. So to make sure the bite fits the wound, will give us a reality check, but it'll also make you mad when you're in the middle of it, right? If someone says to you, that's not happening right now, you're like, you don't understand, and we're mad. Why? Because it might not be happening right now, but your whole body feels like it's happening right now. So it's best not to discuss all that until the person comes down off, or the tornado goes up back into the clouds. And then you're like, hey, it's a sunny day again. Nice. Right? And that's usually when people don't want to talk about it. And it's really when you need to. Let's talk about what happened. What was going on in your head? I don't know. It's like I had this thought and I had this feeling like people were after me. And this is without using, right? Because most of the time when you're using, it's hard to sort out reality for at least 3 months after you've come off of meth or something like that. You think you're powerful enough to sort it out, but you're not. It takes at least 3 months, and the brain will settle down, and you're like, okay, so I think this is what happened. And everyone's like, yeah, that's what we saw. Right? But until you come down, people are tolerating that because they don't know what to do with it. But if it's really from a trauma and it's got you ramped up, it's best for the people around you not to try to problem solve, give you a speech. How many of you love speeches when you're having a panic attack? You're like, honey, what I need right now is a speech. I just tell me everything I should do. Nobody wants to hear about it because you literally feel like you're leaving your body. And so we've talked about here about the tap, when a child is having a panic attack. Little babies can have panic attacks. Their adrenaline is hot, and it's a different cry. You know the kind of cry where they're crying but no sound's coming out? That's a level of panic. You got the, like, give me something, or I don't want to be here. But then it moves into, now you're making me mad, right? There's those cries, they're like, get over here. But there is a level. If you ever seen a child fall and it really hurts, no sound comes out when they're crying. Then that's when you go, oh no, because something is really up there. So even with a child, just on their chest resets, because that's right above the heart, between the shoulder blades resets. Remember I said that tapping resets the heart's brain to say, okay, I'm still here. I'm still here. You don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you have had heart palpitations? Doesn't matter your age, they'll go boom, 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 ba-da-bum, boom, 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 ba-da-dum, dum, 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 bum, bum. Oh, no, that's not... But you can get dizzy afterwards or whatever, and then it just doesn't happen again for days. That can be hormonal. That can be the body trying to search to find where it's resetting. Right? That could be like, stop drinking that much coffee. That could be that, right? Just saying. Number one thing, though, if you go into the hospital and you have a panic attack, they will tell you to stay away from chocolate. Caffeine's in chocolate. Stay away from coffee. And then people have a panic attack before they leave the hospital because they said, stay away from coffee. So caffeine has to come down. It constricts your esophagus. Did you know that? When things are heavily caffeinated, your chest will be tight. You can be walking around. You could be snowboarding or whatever, and your chest is tight, and you don't know it because you're used to it. But the esophagus, the little ileocecal valve at the end, many times will get so stressed, the flapper will stay open, and your food will come right up your throat. Yeah. Ever have that where you're like, lunch just talked to me. I had to swallow it back down. Yeah? Those are all high stress signs. And so they'll try to tell you, stay away from the caffeine because caffeine is a drug. Bum, bum, bum. Right? And it's the kind that constricts your blood flow. So if you're dehydrated and you're like, well, I had a cup of coffee, and you're like, it's a diuretic, makes you go to the bathroom. So now you're going to be more dehydrated, and the caffeine constricts your blood vessels, and that's not what you're needing at that time. You need water. So those are simple things. Even someone had asked about they're a teenager or whatever. It's like, yeah, they need water. They need something with oxygen in it. They need to breathe and lay still. Close their eyes. Not a lot of lighting. Do not scroll on the computer. If you've had a panic attack and you're not at a job where you have to scroll, find a way to stay off the computer for a while. Because the blue light coming off of that will do this in your brain, and the scrolling is even worse. And they call it the flutter in the background. So you'll be walking around and there's this flutter. And I've said before, if you go to sleep at night and then you shut the lights off and it's pitch black and you still see lights in your eyes, that's the flutter. That says, you better get off the ride, baby. Whatever you ate, whatever you're doing, you need to breathe. You need to relax. You need to go for a walk and get some of the adrenaline out of your system. Heart palpitations are not some people have them, they live till they're 95 years old. But they are a concern. They are something we should pay attention to, not to the point of like, and then start panicking over, but it's like, I need to note that. It's a little note to self, that was a palpitation. What did I eat? How much rest did I get? How many cups of coffee did I have? Did I eat a whole candy bar? What am I doing? Self-evaluation again. Because you're going to want to keep yourself more like this. High highs and low lows with panic disorder, not good. So I remember taking our youth to Acquire the Fire. Have you ever heard of Acquire the Fire? They'd have their big subwoofers coming off the stage, and there'd be 10,000 youth there. The bass is going, and the drums are really loud. And, of course, where do we want to be? Right up close and personal to that. You can go deaf in front of one of those big speakers. You can. Most people don't know that, and they'll be like, yeah, in front of it, and you're like, ooh, long term, don't do that. And at the same time, when you go home, you can still feel the bass on your chest. It's the weird, you're like, okay, I'm laying still, there's no music, but you feel like the music is still on. You can't jazz your body like that and get over panic disorder. It doesn't work. But here's the problem. Trauma, abuse, addiction, hates the quiet. Because when it's quiet, you think. And when you think, you don't like what you're thinking about. So we'll drown that. So we'll try to find something that's an equal, right? So this is where, people are really angry. I've talked about this before. You're not going to go and find some loving song. Just something that's smooth. And I'm so angry right now. And, no. You're going to try to find your equal. You're going to try to produce your equal. And so that's where people are just blaring it, heading down the road, You're going down the road and it's like, and it's loud. It starts out that way, but then it goes into a higher thing. And, when they get home, they're like this inside already. And so that's what they're walking around, and their mama says, what you been doing? And it's like, shut up, old lady. I mean, it just comes out because they're inside. They're like that. And it's high adrenaline. And so if you're an easily adrenalized person, you got to learn how to take it down. Right on? Does your bite match your wound at that point? However angry you were because your dad said a certain thing. Okay, that's what happened. That's what's real. Yeah, it hurt your feelings. Okay, but that's all that happened. It was that. And now you take your music and you produce it into something more. We're going to take what he said and we're going to ramp it up. We're going to bring it higher and higher. I'll show you, old man. Then we start walking different, because we're all gangster-like now because Dad said something. And then, then when you get to be my age and you look back and you're like, that's so stupid. I'm telling you ahead of time, it's like, you're like, I got mad. I mean, I was all whatever over a comment. The bite didn't match the wound. I was Jurassic Parking it is what I was doing. These are all my clinical terms, by the way. One day someone's going to write a book, if not me, with these clinical terms, and people will be amazed. No, I just like to talk like this because I can understand it better than all the big 6-cylinder, whatever they are. Because it can sound like by virtue of its empiricism, it diversities metaphysics. Amen? No, it's better to say Jurassic Park versus Ladybug. So wisdom is calling to all of us in the streets. But when you're in a panic, do you hear wisdom? No, you don't. You might even hear the fool. The foolish part of you, that little kid, and be like, come on, let's just go get high. Let's just go do. Yeah, because that makes so much sense right now. It's going to make your situation so much better. And because someone hurt me, I'm going to hurt me. That makes sense. I'm telling you, I'll say this to you over and over because that's what it is. You're like, I'm going to smoke this whole thing. Oh, yeah, because you're really hurting everyone else. You're not. You're like, I'm hurting me because you hurt me. There, that'll teach you a lesson. And everyone's like, oh, my gosh, don't do that. No, they're not. They're like, what are you doing? See, that's what I'm talking about. You always do that thing. And they don't have a lot of mercy for you, do they? Because it makes no sense to hurt yourself because someone else hurt you. But we do it. It's been role modeled to us. And we recorded it loud. And so now we're calling it a T-Rex. That's where we just decide. Am I going T-Rex or Ladybug? I don't know. I think I'm going T-Rex. You know? Hey, those little ladybugs hurt, by the way. Then when you end up popping them and they stink so bad. And it's not a good experience, but it's nothing like having a T-Rex chasing you and just like engulfing you, right? It's a different thing. So we have to be able to see what's really real. It takes wisdom to see the real. That's super on your natural. Because you talking about yourself in a third person doesn't see what's real. And the little kid over here, not real. And the person in the middle that's frozen and can't shift to drive or back up is not in the real either. It takes super on my natural part for me to see what God says about it. Then I go, oh, thank you for giving me a reality check. Oh, I heard a sermon and it gave me a reality check. Oh, I read a verse and suddenly I was like, that's what my problem is. It gives you a reality check and is God supering your natural? He's supernatural. And so when that happens, you can grab a hold of that and you go, that is what's real. What's real is I'm loved. Yeah, but that's not what so-and-so said. I don't care. I'll follow so-and-so. I'm in love with Jesus. Right? And what's real is if you anchor in, like we talked about on Saturday night, if he's your anchor, he's your hope, and then you tie it into everything he said about you, he delights over us, the Bible says. He hovers over us and delights over us with singing. Yeah. Psalms talks about that. He laid his life down for us. He is our lawyer when we need one. He is the in-between, the Father, and this earthly realm, and stands before the throne of grace on our behalf. He is the authority we've been given. He is the freedom. He is our sanctification, our justification, where we're made just as if we've never sinned. He is all of that. Who am I? Yeah, I can be his messenger, but without him, I got nothing to say. Right? So I have to say what he says. And in that, now, think about it. The beginning of wisdom is get skillful and godly wisdom. It is preeminent. And with all you're acquiring, get understanding on top of it. Like understand what you're looking at. Actively seek spiritual discernment. Yeah, we need that part where we can see into things we couldn't see before. Mature comprehension. Oh, that's how we see it now. We don't have that in our younger self. And logical interpretation. So, when I say, does the bite match the wound, I'm not saying that if you got bit and it felt intense to you, Ladybug or Jurassic Park, that when you give yourself a reality check, well, it was a ladybug, so no more crying. No, if it hurt, you have the right to express yourself. It's what we do with our crying, right? I see this at funerals. Sometimes people will almost, they don't know what to do themselves. They almost want the closest family members to the person who died to lose it. It's like you need to lose it so that we know you love that person. Well, I will tell you that any funerals we do, or anybody who's going to be there, I may cry, but you're not going to see me lose it. Just telling you that ahead of time. So in the end, you'll all interpret that we don't love anybody. When you have a different view of what's going on, you still have emotions. And you can control your emotions enough to say, I think I'm going to cry right now. And then, later I might cry some more. But it isn't like, I lost control, and that can happen, and you're okay if that happens. But you can't live in that state. It's what we do with our emotions. We can't allow our emotions to be the lead. But we can't ignore them like we can't feel. Does that make sense? So sometimes I'll be talking to somebody and I'm truly grieving a situation. I'm talking just like I'm talking now. Tears are running down my face. I'm crying. But their interpretation of how they feel something really strong is like, curled up in a ball and everything. Okay, that's how you feel. I'm feeling too. Remember we talked about this last week? Tears are coming down my face. That's big. Just saying. Allow yourself to have the proper emotions. And if you see the tail coming out the sky, and you go, and it starts to get dark and gloomy out, and all of a sudden there's not much for wind, and it's too hot. That's a perfect setting for a tornado. So emotionally, it can be like that. That's when we start looking at the skies, like, what is going on out here? And then you see the tail coming down. Well, if you can grab yourself in that moment and say, oh, wait, what are we doing? What are we doing? What is this about? What is real? Because once the tornado is down and it's sucking up everything around it, it's hard to give it a reality check at that point. You just got to wait till the wind passes and it goes back up. So we're trying to learn how to catch it when the sky goes dark. And we'll talk about that next week. Let's stand and we're going to pray. Yeah, same bat channel, same bat time. I don't know if you're old enough for that one, but I used to watch Batman and Robin. I had a crush on Robin. I know that's... I was pretty little, but now I look and I'm like, what? But I'm just saying, it was so real. But at the same time, they'd say that at the end. Same bat channel, same bat time. So, Father, we just come before you. We thank you that, Lord God, we want to know how to be in the real, stay in the real, sustain in the real, stand therefore in the real, withstand in the real, and never have to go to fantasy at all. Never have to go into what's not real. God, give us the ability. Wisdom, we hear you. You're crying in the streets for us. We hear you. We're coming your way. We're coming your way, and you're coming our way. We respond to you right now in the name of Jesus. We thank you that you're giving us righteous judgment and that we'll discern properly. In Jesus' name. Now, I will tell you my experience in all the times that I spoke in the jail and different places like that where there'd be droves of people, workforce centers, I'd say, who regularly has panic attacks, and like most of the room would lift their hands. I laid out just what I laid out here tonight. And I didn't get into like this is how we're going to catch it. And just because they knew that, it changed everything. So I want you to expect that. It's like you can see that, oh, okay, does the bite match the wound? Is this a tail coming down out just because things have gotten dark and cloudy and there's no wind to move things right now and it feels pretty hot emotionally? So is that what's going on? Right? We got to walk through the storm. We're not going to walk around it. We're going to walk through it. And so just knowing that, once you know you can't not know, it'll cause you to go, oh, I see the tail. I got to catch this right now. I got to get off the ride and just catch what's going on inside of me. Give yourself permission to feel, but don't let it go Jurassic Park. If it doesn't deserve Jurassic Park, don't give it to it. Like, I ain't giving you that. I might give you Ladybug, but you ain't getting Jurassic Park over this. Right? I'm going to feel something, but you don't get to chase me. Amen? You are blessed and highly favored. I will see you next week. Be sure to get some of the flyers that are out there on Saturday night